Have you ever considered how the world changes when you stop looking at it through the single window of your native tongue? Most of us move through our lives believing that as long as we can be understood, everything is fine. We treat language like a simple tool similar to a hammer or a screwdriver that we use to get a job done. In our modern age, it feels like one language is slowly covering the map like a giant blanket. This makes many people wonder if the effort of learning something new is even worth it anymore. We see translation apps on our phones and we hear the same popular songs in every airport. It is easy to think that the goal of talking is just to move information from one brain to another. But language is much more than just a delivery service for facts. It is a secret code that holds the history and the spirit of an entire group of people. When we stay inside our own language, we are only seeing a small slice of what it means to be alive. We are living in a moment where we can connect with almost anyone instantly, but we often lack the depth to truly understand them. We are going to explore why the act of learning a new language is one of the best things you can do for your brain and your soul. This is not about being a perfect student or memorizing long lists of grammar rules. It is about the physical joy of sounds and the mental stretch of seeing the world in a different order. We will look at how moving the vowels and consonants in your mouth can actually protect your health and sharpen your focus. It is a journey from seeing language as a chore to seeing it as a ticket to a much larger and more colorful reality. On the surface, we believe that learning a foreign language is mainly about travel or business. The surface concept is that we learn a new way of speaking so we can order coffee in a different city or sign a contract with a new partner. We look at language as a skill to be checked off a list, like learning how to use a new computer program. On the surface, it seems like the only reason to struggle with new words is because we have to. We assume that if everyone speaks English, then the problem of communication is solved. This surface view tells us that language is just a way to exchange data. We think that if the meaning is the same, then the words do not really matter. But this surface level of thinking keeps us in a very narrow room. We assume that because we can read a translation, we have understood the culture. But a translation is like looking at a photograph of a meal instead of eating it. We stay on the surface because it is safe and easy. We miss the music and the texture of the words that make a culture feel like home to the people who live there. Behind this surface view lies a hidden assumption that all languages work in basically the same way. We often assume that every language has a word-for-word match for our own thoughts. But the hidden truth is that different languages force you to think in different directions. We assume that our native language is a neutral way of seeing the world. The hidden reality is that your language is a set of glasses that colors everything you see. We assume that the brain stays the same regardless of how many languages it holds. However, the hidden truth is that bilingualism is a form of physical exercise for the mind. It builds a stronger and more flexible brain that can handle multiple tasks at once. There is a hidden assumption that learning is only for the young. But the hidden reality is that the brain can grow and adapt at any age when it is challenged by new patterns. We assume that the difficulty of a new language is a barrier to overcome. The hidden truth is that the difficulty is exactly where the benefit lies. It is like driving on the other side of the road. It forces you to pay more attention to things you usually do without thinking. This hidden logic suggests that the value of a language is not just in what you say but in how the saying of it changes who you are. This leads us to a structural pattern of how languages are built. We see a pattern in some languages where the meaning is found in the rigid pillars of the consonants. For example, in Arabic, the consonants stay still while the vowels dance around them to change the meaning from he wrote to he writes. This is a structural design that feels different in the mouth and the mind. We see another structural pattern in the way words are ordered. In some languages you might say the cat is in the hat, but in others you might say he was tubbed inside gorging cake. This is a structural shift in how we process time and space. When you learn these patterns, you are not just learning new labels for old things. You are learning a new architecture for your thoughts. This structural pattern repeats in every language on Earth. Some focus on the relationship between people while others focus on the action being done. We see a pattern where the brain becomes more resilient against aging and diseases like dementia because it is used to navigating these different structures. By recognizing these patterns, we can see that language is a living system that shapes our mental health. We can reframe our entire perspective by seeing language learning as a form of play rather than work. Instead of seeing a grammar lesson as a boring task, we can reframe it as a way to roll new sounds around in our mouths. We can reframe the confusion of a new word order as a fun challenge for our brains. Reframing the experience means realizing that you do not need to be perfect to participate. You can reframe a conversation in a new language as an invitation to a secret club. This shift in perspective allows us to see that the goal is not to reach a destination but to enjoy the walk. We can reframe the dominance of one language as a reason to protect the others. Every time a language dies, a whole way of seeing the world disappears. This perspective shift turns you from a passive consumer of information into a defender of human diversity. When we reframe our struggle as a way to blow our own minds, we stop being afraid of making mistakes. We start to see that the mistakes are just part of the dance. Applying this to your daily life starts with the very simple act of picking one language that sounds beautiful to you. You can apply the principle of bilingual health by spending just 15 minutes a day learning a few new phrases. This is like taking a vitamin for your brain. You can apply the idea of cultural participation by listening to music or watching films from that culture without using subtitles. Even if you do not understand everything, you are training your ear to hear the music of the consonants and vowels. Apply this by trying to think about your day using the word order of a different language. If you are learning Mandarin, try to imagine the world in the way that language describes it. You can apply the practice of curiosity by asking why a language uses a certain word for a certain idea. This opens a window into the values of the people who speak it. In your social life, you can apply this by reaching out to someone who speaks a different language and showing interest in their code. By doing this, you are building bridges instead of walls. You are participating in the culture of the world instead of just watching it from the outside. It is helpful to remember that you do not need a teacher or an expensive school to start. You only need a sense of wonder and a willingness to feel like a beginner again. The joy of language is found in the small moments of connection. It is found in the way your tongue feels when it makes a sound it has never made before. We are learning that the world is much bigger than our own perspective. When we learn a new language, we are giving ourselves a second life and a second way to feel. We are protecting our brains from the fog of the future and opening our hearts to the stories of others. This is the real power of the words we choose. We are not just speaking, we are building a more vibrant and resilient version of ourselves. If you could choose one secret code to unlock today that would let you see the world through the eyes of a completely different culture, which language would you start rolling around in your mouth right now?